Welcome to the Coach Debbie Potts Show, where high performers learn how to stop guessing and start aging stronger, not slower. Your host is Coach Debbie Potts, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, metabolic health coach, and host of this show. Here, we dive into the why behind fatigue, stubborn weight, hormone chaos, gut issues, and declining performance. Using real data, functional lab testing, metabolism analysis, and simple daily habits that actually move the needle. Whether you're an endurance athlete, an executive, or simply committed to becoming your strongest future you, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Hey, it's Debbie Potts, and I am back on another rabbit hole series talking about bile flow, hormones, metabolism, GLP-1. Really something I'm seeing as a hidden midlife shift high performers miss often. And I work as a FDN practitioner, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, where we are more so, I would say, health investigators, collecting data, investigating to put the missing pieces of a health puzzle together so you can thrive again. And I really believe we should all be doing this, even if you don't have any big red flags, because as I just retested a few of my labs last 4 months, I realized I feel pretty good, but I'm at the bottom of the barrel for my mitochondrial function. And it's really understanding how we start to settle, thinking we feel good, but oh my gosh, we could feel so much better. And we don't know what we don't know. And I really wish people would be more health optimizers to start taking ownership of their health today, instead of just doing the nutrition and exercise. You think you're doing all the right things, but you're still really not getting the right benefits that you should to rebuild and repair and restore your health from the inside out at a cellular level. And as a practitioner and a coach and a fellow high performer, fellow athlete, I know in middle age, things change and we need to do things differently. But I don't want you to just think, if I take this peptide, if I take these hormones, I take this injection, I take these supplements, you're going to solve everything. It doesn't work, and I've learned this from working as a practitioner since, 10 years. I've been doing more of this holistic side of work for people that they're not just athletes, but they're struggling getting where they want, or they just want to be smarter with how they're doing everything to improve their future self. So don't think that you need to have digestion issues, gut bloating, skin issues, or something. It could be just you want to prevent things as you age, because things change and we need to start thinking, when I'm over 40, start wondering, am I doing all the right things? Why does this feel harder? Because as we age, the shift isn't about discipline. For us high performers, you're doing all the things, but are you doing the right things for you at this time in life? It's a shift, and we need to look at the signaling and the order of operations and how our body works and what we need to do to restore metabolic harmony. One of the most overlooked upstream regulators is not just the vagus nerve, that's the big conductor, but really seeing some correlations which relates to the vagus nerve and stomach acid is bile acid physiology. As I've been going over in these deep dive episodes, is to create a aha for you. Bile isn't just about digestion, it's about signaling. And most people think bile breaks down fat, and that's all it does. Just to review, if you're not familiar with, bile acids are made from cholesterol in the liver. Bile acids are then released into the intestines, then they act as hormone messengers. And the bile acid, or bile, binds to two major receptors. And if you want to know, they're TGR5 and FXR, if you really want to know these receptors. But what I thought was curious is that these receptors help regulate GLP-1 release. We're talking about all these weight loss GLP-1 medications, and I'm starting to be curious, well, why does GLP-1 get lower as we age? What's happening with so many people are having huge success taking GLP-1 peptides and they're losing weight, but the whole thing is losing muscle and slowing metabolism down when you get off of them, and imbalance in your gut. But going back to bile acid, has these receptors, hormone messengers. And looking at the receptors as GLP-1 release, PYY release, insulin sensitivity, glucose regulation, thyroid expression, mitochondrial fat oxidation, microbiome balance, estrogen clearance, toxin elimination, and inflammatory tone. So bile is not just a digestive fluid. It's involved in all these processes helping regulate that long list. It's a metabolic control system. Why so many high performers miss this? I think a lot of practitioners miss this. Before bile even flows, remember we keep going over the order of operations. Several upstream systems must function in order for bile to be released. As a nutritional therapy practitioner, I've learned north to south. We work on order of operation. We don't start working on your bile flow necessarily. We start first up north. Why is the bile not being made? Why is it not being released? Go backwards. And we keep going backwards, understanding the why, we get to the vagal tone. So working on the vagus nerve, looking at stomach acid levels, signaling of your CCK, the contraction of your gallbladder, and liver mitochondria ATP. If you are a high performer, you're chronically stressed out, you're in the sympathetic dominance nervous system, you're stuck, you're not metabolically flexible with the nervous system, the vagus nerve is underperforming. And this is why I talk about the vagus nerve in every conversation, on my solo podcast episodes, and with my guest experts. The vagus nerve coordinates digestion and many other areas of our body. Without vagus nerve working, if we have poor vagal tone, remember the stomach acid drops, the pancreatic enzymes drop, CCK signaling is less strong, so it's weaker, and the gallbladder contraction at end result is going to be less strong. If we don't have a contraction of our gallbladder to release bile, we're not releasing bile. So even if your liver produces bile, it may not be delivered efficiently. And this is why high performers, wired, driven, always pushing, often have impaired digestion despite perfect nutrition program and their exercise program. When people say to me, I can't figure out what's wrong, I'm eating healthy, I'm eating clean, I'm exercising, I'm doing all the things, I need to look at what else is going on, because that's not the only thing. And that's why I got into doing this with the holistic method, over 10 years ago, understanding the role of nutrition and exercise, sleep, stress management, movement, digestion, our gut health, our microbiome, mineral balance, hydration. And the biggest part of my 8 elements of the holistic method is happiness, gratitude, play, joy. And all of that is in the nervous system. Are you resilient? Now, the stomach acid is something I've talked a lot about as well, is the ignition switch. Low stomach acid is common in middle age, and low stomach acid is leading to poor protein breakdown, mineral deficiency, impaired CCK signaling. So we're going to have delay in the gallbladder activation. We are going to have altered motility, upstream microbial overgrowth. If protein is not broken down, the CCK release is impaired. CCK, remember, tells the gallbladder to squeeze. And if we have low stomach acid and a weak CCK, we're going to have a weak bile release. The end result, no fat digestion. It's not going to be very efficient. And we're missing that bile signaling. And now we have metabolic signaling shifts. So then we go into how bile acids stimulate this GLP-1 and PYY that I'm learning about. Bile acids bind to the TGR5 receptors on L cells, if you want to know, in the intestine. So when TGR5 activates, intracellular signaling increases. Mitochondria activity inside those cells increase. GLP-1 is released and PYY is released. That is, again, bile acids need to bind to TGR5 receptors on L cells in the intestine, and TGR5 activates GLP-1 and PYY. Now, GLP-1 that you hear about all the time, and they're making billions of dollars, I'm sure, slows gastric emptying and improves glucose-stimulated insulin secretion and enhances insulin sensitivity and also promotes satiety. So all those people taking GLP-1 peptides, they're naturally in your body. So understanding how they work. Now we have PYY, helps regulate appetite, prolongs fullness. But if bile flow is poor, TGR5 activation drops and GLP-1 tone drops. If PYY level drops, now our hunger increases, our blood sugar becomes unstable, and this is not because of discipline, it is this impaired signaling and order of operations is broken. And this is why millions of people are taking these GLP-1 agonists. They're forcing the signal that bile normally stimulates naturally. But if the upstream is broken, forcing downstream doesn't fix the train. Why? Bile acids also activate what's called FXR inside the cells. FXR regulates hepatic glucose production, lipid, which is fat metabolism, inflammatory tone, insulin sensitivity. But if bile signaling is balanced, the liver glucose output is regulated. Triglycerides improve, inflammation lowers, insulin signaling will improve. But again, if bile signaling is weak, insulin resistance increases, and our visceral fat increases, and our hepatic fat accumulation increases. In middle age, insulin resistance is often a bile signaling issue layered on hormone shifts. Bile acids also activate, we talked about TGR5, which is related to mitochondria fat oxidation. So we need the right signaling to increase oxidative phosphorylation, brown fat, thermogenesis, and fat oxidation. Simply, bile acids tell our mitochondria to burn fat. So if our bile flow is weak, mitochondria downshift, resting metabolic rate may decline, cold intolerance may increase. Remember, that's related to the brown fat. And lack of it, recovery can slow down, or fat loss might stall. This is not being lazy. Now we're looking at a metabolic conservation state. What about the thyroid? Thyroid conversion is a liver-dependent function, as well as in the gut, because T4 is the inactive form of thyroid medication doesn't always work because your T4, most people take T4 medication, still needs to be converted into the active form of T3. So T4 converts to T3, and that happens largely in the liver, a little bit in the gut. If bile flow and liver mitochondria function are impaired, T3, the active form of thyroid production, may decline. Reverse T3, like the brakes on your metabolism, may increase, and receptor sensitivity may weaken. So we might see in your labs, and so many people get to see their doctor and say, my thyroid is normal, because they're just looking at the TSH, which is a thyroid stimulating hormone. But we can also see patterns looking at other markers and putting this all together, looking for more. If we have a low metabolic expression, so many people middle age, as high performers, driven, ambitious individuals, are getting told their labs are normal, but I feel my thyroid's low. I feel sluggish metabolism. What if your signaling is suppressed? Then we tie into middle age. Why do we see this more often? What else is going on? Well, for us females, our estrogen is cleared through the bile. The liver conjugates estrogen and sends it into bile. But in the gut, certain bacteria produce what we measure. It's called beta-glucuronidase. This is an enzyme that deconjugates estrogen. If your bile flow is sluggish and beta-glucuronidase marker that we measure is elevated, your estrogen is recirculating. Remember, certain bacteria in your gut produce this beta-glucuronidase enzyme that breaks down estrogen. If we see that happening, that estrogen is recirculating, you may experience as a female more breast tenderness, PMS type of symptoms, and perimenopause, more histamine reactions, perhaps intolerance to hormone replacement therapy, and inflammatory weight gain. This is clearance failure. It's not hormone production excess. We're just not clearing well, recirculating. Then I want to look at the microbiome and the role of bile. Bile shapes the microbiome. Microbes that transform bile acids. Microbes also transform bile acids. If bile flow weakens, the antimicrobial pressure drops. Dysbiosis increases if our bile flow weakens. And a whole nother episode coming up soon, short-chain fatty acid production declines. Did you know that short-chain fatty acids stimulate GLP-1 and reduce inflammation? So if your short-chain fatty acids decline, the GLP-1 peptides decline further. Inflammation increases, insulin sensitivity declines. You're more insulin resistant, so this becomes a big loop. So in middle age, our bile physiology changes. Why? Well, our estrogen for us females declines, mitochondrial efficiency declines, bile synthesis efficiency is shifting. Now we can see testosterone declining in men and women as we age, and our visceral fat increases. That can increase our inflammatory cytokines and add more hepatic stress. Now, when chronic stress accumulates, our vagus tone declines and the gallbladder contraction weakens. Then we can see stomach acid declining, and then we've got the CCK signal to the gallbladder weaken, and the microbiome diversity narrows, so the bile acid pool composition changes. All roads converge on bile and the vagus nerve. Bile converges on metabolism. So the cascade happens. Hormones shift, our mitochondrial efficiency declines, bile synthesis and release weakens, this TGRF5 and FXR signaling declines, and then our GLP-1 and PYY decline, insulin resistant increases, our fat oxidation declines, then estrogen recirculation increases, inflammation increases, then our thyroid receptor sensitivity declines, and the metabolic rate adapts downward. This is the midlife cascade. High performers may feel it first. We push through stress. We train hard. We override fatigue. We feel that we are invincible and thrive and more is better. So we stay in this sympathetic dominant state. Remember, sympathetic dominance suppresses your digestion. Suppressed digestion suppresses bile. Suppressed bile suppresses metabolic signaling. And eventually your body says enough and shifts into protection, into survival mode. So understand the order of operations and what we can do to improve it. Depends on you. We need personalized work. So we work from within and figure out where to start to create your foundational blueprint. Let's go into the role of the mitochondria here, because I think this is a big aha discovery I keep seeing and started to go a little deeper on. When we talk about mitochondria efficiency declining as we age and the role of estrogen and bile, let's go into what that means. I think this is really good correlation to think about. A cellular cascade. So if you understand this, middle age should stop feeling mysterious, because we need to understand the why, and then we can work on your own solutions together. Let's go into mitochondria and estrogen. We've been taught that estrogen is reproductive. It's actually has so many roles. We've done a lot of podcasts with experts on this topic. It's a mitochondria regulator, and estrogen receptors exist inside mitochondria. Estrogen enhances oxidative phosphorylation, increases ATP production, increases antioxidant enzyme expression, stabilizes mitochondrial membranes, improves glucose support, improves fatty acid oxidation, reduces reactive oxygen species. In simple language, estrogen makes our mitochondria more efficient. And so estrogen declining in peri and postmenopause, we see ATP energy production dropping. We see an increase in oxidative stress. We see mitochondria membrane integrity weaken, and our metabolic flexibility declines. So now think about the liver. The liver is one of the most mitochondria-dense organs in the body. And bile production is ATP dependent. Bile production needs energy, which comes from the mitochondria. Are you with me? So bile acids are synthesized from cholesterol through a series of enzymatic steps. So bile synthesis requires energy. And these steps require functional hepatocytes, intact mitochondria function, sufficient ATP, and proper redox balance. If our mitochondria efficiency drops, cholesterol conversion to bile acids becomes less efficient. And bile acid conjugation may weaken, transport pumps that push bile into the canaluculi, sounds Italian word, catatucci, slow down. But this, what it can mean is that we have thicker bile, slower bile flow, and altered bile acid pool composition. So this isn't a gallbladder disease. It's more to do with energetic inefficiency. So when our estrogen drops in middle age for us females, mitochondria efficiency drops. And when mitochondria efficiency drops, we're not creating that energy currency for the body, ATP. So now our bile synthesis efficiency shifts. Now, metabolic signaling starts to shift. Remember, bile is a metabolic amplifier. Bile acids activate what we went over, TGR5 and FXR receptors. Remember, these receptors regulate GLP-1, PYY, insulin sensitivity, hepatic glucose production, mitochondrial fat oxidation, and inflammatory tone. So when our bile signaling weakens, our GLP-1 declines, our satiety declines, insulin resistance goes up, fat ox declines, energy expenditure declines. So this is so often why us females and men might feel in middle age, why am I hungry all the time? Why is fat loss so hard? Why is my metabolism slowing down? We need to think about how bile is a metabolic amplifier. When estrogen declines, mitochondria weaken, bile signaling weakens, and our metabolism downshifts. So this is why we think, what's going on? And this isn't for everyone. I'm just finding this as a pattern I see more and more, even in myself. I'm taking thyroid T3 the past couple of years. I'm taking estrogen patches. I'm doing progesterone on and off, and I'm doing liver detox. But why am I suddenly having this bile issues? Estrogen. Is that middle age? I'm 54, turning 55 somehow this year. We need to look at our hormones. Now, if we layer in testosterone for men and women, testosterone, as you know, we think of it mostly as lean mass, but also mitochondrial density, insulin sensitivity, metabolic rate. So as we age, our testosterone declines and our visceral fat increases, inflammatory cytokines increase, hepatic insulin resistance can increase, fatty liver risk increases, inflammation impairs hepatocyte mitochondrial function. Inflammation impairs bile acid synthesis, bile acid receptor signaling. So now we've got low testosterone, higher inflammation, more hepatic stress, and hepatic stress leads to impaired bile signaling. So men might see this and see it in their labs as rising triglycerides, increased fat around their waist. So your waist circumference is higher. Your recovery from workouts is slower, and you have lower drive. And women can feel this too, especially in middle age. Now let's talk about the nervous system. Always comes back to that vagus nerve and how it declines. In middle age, it's peak stress accumulation. People have busy career, busy family, aging parents, sleep disruption, high performance pressure. Chronic stress keeps you in that sympathetic dominance. And sympathetic dominance, as you know, we've gone over and over and over. Stomach acid, pancreatic enzyme, CCK coordination, vagal tone, gallbladder contraction. Sympathetic dominance suppresses all of those functions. Gallbladder contraction requires the coordinated parasympathetic input. Again, if vagal tone declines, even if the bile is produced, it may not be released efficiently. So you may have normal liver enzymes, normal ultrasound, but impaired bile flow signaling. And before that happens, there's a reason why is it signaling not just vagus nerve, but the stomach acid we went over. Yes, it naturally declines with age. We have less stomach acid made, but understand the role of stomach acid, if it's too low, can impair protein breakdown, weaken your CCK stimulation, less pancreatic enzyme response, less gallbladder contraction stimulus. CCK is a hormone that tells your gallbladder, squeeze now. So if CCK signaling is less strong, it's weaker, the bile delivery is weak. And now we have this cascade of compounding events. Microbiome changes as we age, right? We talked to Cynthia Thurlow. Her new book is about the microbiome and aging. And the microbial diversity narrows as we age. Akkermansia declines, butyrate production, bacteria decline, beta-glucuronidase may increase. Bacteria transforms bile acids. If the microbiome composition is shifting, the bile acid pool composition can change, and the signaling alters, and we may have GLP-1 stimulation changes, and estrogen deconjugation increases. So middle age is not just about hormones declining, it's this microbiome bile hormone cross talk. It's shifting. And knowing which bacteria are produced, I'd love for you to do a GI map and a Dutch test and blood chemistry panel and really see what's going on and look at your genetics in a 3x4 blueprint. So here's the message. Estrogen changes for us female, testosterone for men, and we see that females as well. But just hormones are changing. Mitochondrial efficiency is changing. We have less ATP production. So then if our body, as the liver, doesn't have enough energy to produce enough ATP production, it doesn't have enough energy for the functions of our body as bile synthesis. So if we have less bile signaling, we have that GLP-1 insulin sensitivity declining, our fat oxidation declines, we have more fat, visceral fat increasing in our body, inflammation markers go higher, thyroid sensitivity receptor sensitivity declines, and metabolism just adapts downward. At the same time, testosterone declines and inflammation goes up, hepatic stress increases, chronic stress, vagal tone declines, gallbladder contraction weakens, low stomach acid leads to this less strong signal for the CCK to tell the gallbladder to release bile. Our microbiome we went over shifts. All roads converge on this connection to bile, and on bile converges on metabolism. So midlife does not have to break your body. I'm not trying to be Debbie the Downer. Middle age shifts are signaling. So we need to do things differently. When mitochondrial efficiency shifts, bile signaling shifts. And bile signaling shifts are metabolic intelligence shifts. So that's why pushing harder doesn't work. That's why macros don't fix it. That's why GLP-1 drugs are exploding, because we're trying to force downstream signals instead of restoring the upstream train. I think of this as the Thrive strategy. If we can restore your mitochondrial efficiency, parasympathetic tone, stomach acid, gallbladder coordination, microbiome diversity, and bile flow, then our GLP-1 normalize. Insulin sensitivity should improve. Thyroid expression improves. Fat oxidation should improve. Hormone clearance improves. Energy becomes clean. Less oxidative stress. This is how we choose to thrive and not struggle. Knowing what you can do today to be your best self in the future, right? So going back to the message. Middle age is not random. It's not just about getting older. It's a systems level signaling shift. And one of the most overlooked pivot points is the microbiome, the bile, the mitochondria, the vagus nerve, creating flow in our body. And understanding, yes, things change as we age. Microbiome changes with it. Diversity is less. We can look at a GI map and see keystone species as Akkermansia and other butyrate producers may decline. We might see beta-glucuronidase producing increase. But here's the deeper piece. Your microbiome doesn't just digest fiber. We went over how it transforms bile acids. And primary bile acids are released from the liver. In the gut, bacteria convert these bile acids into secondary bile acids. The composition of the bile acid pool can determine activation, as we discussed, FXR, TGR5, GLP-1 release, inflammatory tone, insulin sensitivity, and motility. If the microbiome diversity narrows, bile acid transformation can shift. That changes the receptor signaling. And when receptor signaling shifts, metabolism shifts. So yes, the microbiome diversity narrows, bile acid pool composition changes. Again, all roads converge on bile, and bile converges on metabolism. So we talked about this middle age cascade, hormones changing. Keeping in mind, estrogen decline, you can change, but it reduces its mitochondrial efficiency. I didn't realize that estrogen enhances oxidative phosphorylation and stabilizes mitochondrial membranes. So when it declines, ATP production drops and oxidative stress increases. And that's what I saw in my labs last year. Mitochondrial efficiency, if it declines, it's producing less ATP. And if our liver, the mitochondria in our liver, the most mitochondria dense organ, produces less ATP, we don't have enough energy to fuel those different functions as bile conjugation. Crazy how it works. But chronic stress, remember, lowers the vagal tone. Lower vagal tone weakens gallbladder contraction. Lower stomach acid weakens CCK signaling. And now bile delivery is inconsistent. We don't get the right signaling, and we don't have enough bile reaching the intestine, so we have less receptor activation. So it's just downstream. It continues, right? This is why I feel that high performers in middle age, we are wired to override everything. We are wired to push through stress, to train harder, to ignore this early signs of fatigue, to ignore those red flags. You only know how to function your best in sympathetic dominance. Sympathetic dominance, we went over, suppresses digestion. Suppressed digestion, we talked about suppresses stomach acid, and I'm repeating this to get in your head, how that will lower stomach acid, and that lowers the signaling to the CCK to tell the gallbladder contract. And if the gallbladder is not told to contract, it doesn't reduce, or the reduction of bile flow happens. Reduced bile flow weakens this GLP-1, insulin sensitivity, fat oxidation, hormone clearance. Eventually, the body shifts into what we've talked about, protection mode, survival mode, metabolic protection. The body says, I cannot keep burning rate this fuel without stability. And end result, you feel fatigue, you feel hunger, belly fat, inflammation, brain fog, hormone chaos. This is what we're talking about, adaptive physiology. And this is why we don't push harder in middle age. We need to sequence smarter. We don't chase GLP-1 first, hormones, peptides. We want to restore your signaling. We want to restore your resiliency, the nervous system, shift out of threat survival mode and get into safety mode. We want to reduce inflammatory stagnation and improve fluid movement, drainage. We want to restore ATP production, improve your resiliency, and be able to remove the waste, get the garbage taken out to the curb, and then get someone to pick up the garbage at the curb, right? Get it out of the body. It's an order of operation. So we need to restore the flow in your body in order. So your GLP-1 normalizes, your insulin improves, hunger stabilizes, fat oxidation improves, estrogen clears appropriately, your thyroid starts functioning, and your mitochondria are getting to be able to work at the right level, efficient. So we're not forcing anything. We're removing the interference. And your body will remember how to regulate itself once we help it resolve metabolic chaos and restore and move towards metabolic harmony. So you don't have to struggle as you age. You can choose to thrive. But thriving requires understanding the upstream systems, not chasing downstream symptoms that so many people do first. It's a Band-Aid. We're not understanding the why, the root cause. So that's what we do from within. If you're ready to investigate your terrain properly and understand your bile flow, your mitochondrial function, your hormone clearance, and metabolic flexibility, then it's time to stop guessing. So you can book a discovery call with Amanda at From Within. She'll walk you through how to get your own personalized Future You blueprint today. It's not about hacking. It's about sequencing your physiology so you can be fit and healthy from the inside out and choose to thrive as you age. So I'll put the link in the website link below for a free call. Remember, aging is going to happen, but struggling is optional. So choose to thrive as you age so you can live your best life in the second half of your life. And we are here to do that. That's my passion, my purpose, and my mission is to help you, the ambitious high performer, be a health optimizer today. So if you are over 40, doing all the right things, you're eating clean, you're training hard, prioritizing sleep, yet your metabolism feels slower, hunger feels stronger, and fat loss feels harder, this episode, I want you to re-listen to it. It can be your missing link. And if this deep dive rabbit hole episode helps you be curious what you can do today, let me know, and we'll get a discovery call for you to get you started to learn about how to get your Future You blueprint. And then you can add in the hormones and the peptides if they're needed. But sometimes we need to rebuild your foundation, things start to work more. So understand that bile acids are not just digestive fluids. Why are they changing as we age? Understand how they're connected as metabolic signaling molecules, and they help regulate all that we talked about today. So estrogen decline, mitochondrial efficiency changing, bile synthesis shifts, GLP-1 signaling, insulin resistance, fat oxidation, inflammation, thyroid, metabolism downshifting. Remember, it's not a willpower problem. It's a signaling problem. And high performers will feel this first. So the midlife cascade hopefully is explained a little bit more today, and why high achievers, high performers feel all this first. And we need to understand how to restore your foundation and get you back to metabolic harmony. Thanks for listening and being curious about what I'm learning and sharing with you to be your best self in the future.
Thanks for listening to the Coach Debbie Pot Show. If today's episode sparked a light bulb moment, that's your sign to stop guessing and start building your personalized future you blueprint. You can learn more or book a discovery call at www.debbiepots.net. Be sure to follow the show on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search Coach Debbie Potts. 2 T's. If this episode helped you, please subscribe, rate, and review. It's how we help more people age with strength, energy, and clarity. Until next time, remember, age is inevitable. How you age is not.